UFA fam, welcome in. Today we're going to be discussing our top 36 running backs for week 8. Remember, there are no buys this week, so that is a positive coming off the week where we had 6 buys the week before. But let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we? So starting off with the RB1s, we have Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, Tony Pollard, Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Swift, Jahmyr Gibbs, Raheem Mostert, and Kenneth Walker. So let's go ahead and discuss a few of these RB1s that I really want to hit on this week. First off, let's talk about Breece Hall. Finally, Robert Saleh did the right thing and decided to turn Breece Hall into the workhorse that he should be, and he has produced 68% of the snaps week 6, 63% of the rush attempts, and 60% of the routes with a whopping 16% target share. He has been very good this year despite coming off a major knee injury. He's been 11th in yards per route run, 22nd in yards created per touch, and 5th in breakaway run rate so far this season. He is an easy top 5 running back this week against the Giants. Over the last 3 games, they've allowed a 6.01 yards per carry average, 3 touchdowns, 56 receiving yards allowed, and the 13th most PPR points to the running back position. So Breece Hall is in a fantastic spot. Now he has the workhorse role once again, and especially coming off the bye, he should be fresh. So let's talk about Isaiah Pacheco against Denver. His usage rate is kind of stabilized at this point. He's handling about 55 to 60% of the snaps, 65% of the rush attempts, with a 12% target share the last 4 games. He has now been a top 15 running back in 5 straight weeks. Now, this week they face a Denver defense. Now, they have been better over the last couple of weeks. Now, I will say that. That is something we should definitely acknowledge. However, they have still struggled to stop opposing running backs. Over the last 3 games, they've still have allowed the 2nd most rushing yards, the 4th most receiving yards, and the 5th most PPR points allowed to running backs. So Isaiah Pacheco remains in a very good spot this week against the Denver Broncos. Let's move over and talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, this will largely depend on David Montgomery's availability this week. We haven't seen if he's going to be able to practice. They do have a bye week coming up, so it would make sense to kind of hold him out one more week. And last week, we did see Jahmyr Gibbs handle a workhorse role, and he finishes the RB2 overall. Finally, they decided to really give him this opportunity, but 86% of the snaps last week, 79% of the rush attempts, 78% of the routes, and a 20% target share, good for 28 PPR points. So Jahmyr Gibbs was very, very good last week. And as long as David Montgomery is out, he gets a great matchup against a Raiders defense that has allowed the 2nd most PPR points over the last 3 weeks and the 5th most on the season. So Jahmyr Gibbs lines up to be in a great spot. We'll just have to monitor what happens with David Montgomery. If David Montgomery was going to play, then I probably would move David Montgomery up as a RB2, high-end RB2, and Jahmyr Gibbs probably falls back down to that low-end RB2, mainly because of usage, and we just know how Dan Campbell likes to run the situation. Lastly, let's move over and talk about Raheem Mostert. Jeff Wilson returned last week. Mostert played only 52% of the snaps, but did handle 75% of the rush attempts and 36% of the routes, but with a discouraging 6% target share. Mostert has been awesome this year, but is starting to look like a little bit like a 3-way committee because Salvon Ahmed and Jeff Wilson both handled opportunities last week. Now, we have seen this matchup already once before, and no surprise that Raheem Mostert balled. He handled 72% of the snaps, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 25.7 fantasy points. Mostert remains one of the most efficient runners in the league. He is 5th in yards created per touch, 7th in breakaway run rate, and 9th in yards per route run. Now, I will mention this. Raheem Mostert is 31 years old. I don't know if they want to continue to hand him as many touches as they have. Mostert, I think you could see something where he is playing around 50, 55% of the snaps, but if he can remain efficient, then I think that everything is all good. Over the last 3 games, the New England Patriots have allowed the 10th most rushing yards and the 12th most PPR points to the position. So it is a good matchup. But the only reason I have him a little bit lower this week is mainly because of the presence of the other 2 guys. That does lower his ceiling just a little bit, but still a great matchup. So let's go ahead and move over to the RB2s, and that is Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, James Cook, Darrell Henderson, Gus Edwards, Deonta Foreman, Dameon Pierce, and Javonte Williams. So let's go ahead and first off, we're going to talk about Bijan Robinson. He missed most of week 7 with what was called an illness. He spoke after the game and said he tried to go, but he decided he just didn't feel right. This isn't an overreaction to last week, but more of a bad matchup against Titans. And also, Bijan hasn't finished as an RB1 in PPR scoring since week 2. Arthur Smith's usage of him has been frustrating to this point. You also have to factor in the Tennessee Titans have been excellent against the run this year. And so it just makes it a little bit harder to trust Bijan. And with Tyler Algier and the way he has been utilized, I'm a little bit lower on Bijan, mainly because of the matchup. But he is somebody you're definitely still starting. And let's move over to Josh Jacobs. Speaking of bad matchup, Josh Jacobs has been pretty rough so far this season. He's currently 20th in fantasy points per game, and he saw his snaps drop last week down from 80% down all the way down to 68% this past week. His RB rush attempts remained at 76%, but Zamir White saw a season high in snaps playing 22%. Jacobs remains a locked in RB2 with easy RB1 upside because of his incredible 85% opportunity share and first and weighted opportunity rating on the season. But he has been terribly inefficient with a 2.9 true yards per carry, which ranks 63rd among all running backs. He's also 40th in breakaway run rate and 34th in yards created per touch. And he gets a awful matchup against the Lions, who have allowed the fourth fewest fantasy points and one of three teams to allow fewer than 400 rushing yards through the first 7 games of the season. Now, Josh Jacobs, it is tough, right? Like I said, because with him, his volume makes him hard to not have as an RB1 because he can get there purely off volume. If this trend continues and he's going to start seeing a little bit less of the work and a little bit less of the snaps, then that's where we get a real problem. And then also, really bad matchup. So that's why Josh Jacobs is where he is. Now, next over, another guy like this is Derrick Henry. Now, he has been completely game script dependent, playing only 56% of snaps on the season. Hard to imagine this week will be any better with Tannehill possibly missing and either Will Levis or Malik Willis starting. He actually hasn't been terrible this year, though. Quite opposite of Josh Jacobs. He's 17th in yards created per touch, 11th in breakaway run rate, but his 3.9 true yards per carry is 27th among all running backs. But with how bad the Titans' offense has been, and his limited touchdown upside is he's only seen 2 goal line carries this season and ranks 15th in fantasy points per game. Now, also factor in the fact that the Falcons have been excellent against stopping the run. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to position and no rushing touchdowns through 7 games. So Derrick Henry is completely game script dependent, and we're talking about either Will Levis, who is a rookie quarterback, or Malik Willis, who looked awful last year starting at quarterback, the possibility of being a quarterback this week. It makes it really tough. I think Tajay Spears definitely mixes in. And so Derrick Henry in a really bad matchup is more of an RB2 for me this week. All right, let's keep it moving here. Let's talk about Darrell Henderson versus Dallas. After being signed off the street, Henderson stepped right in and played 58% of the snaps last week and handled 60% of the rush attempts with an 8% target share. I would expect Henderson to continue to operate as the RB1 moving forward due to his knowledge of the offense and his trust in Sean McVay has in him. And now we'll say this, Dallas on the season has allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points to running backs. However, over the last 3 games, that Dallas has struggled against opposing running backs. They have allowed the 6th most fantasy points over that span. So kind of middle of the road here. I think Darrell Henderson continues to be the RB1 and operates that way. Zach Evans is not a thing. And so let's keep it moving here and let's talk about Dameon Pierce versus Carolina. Now, Dameon Pierce, week 6, he only played 35% of the snaps, 40% of the rush attempts, and 23% of the routes. Now, this is going to be a situation we're going to have to monitor because there was some reports that came out that he suffered a little bit of a knee injury, and that's why Devin Singletary actually played more of the snaps, handled more of the rush attempts in week 6 before they went on bye. Now, they did get the bye week. They got time to rest. So I do expect once they come back, Dameon Pierce is going to be the RB1 in this backfield. But we could see Devin Singletary use a little bit more. This is a great matchup against the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers have been terrible. 3rd most rushing yards, the most rushing touchdowns, and the 2nd most PPR points and the 2nd most PPR points on the season. I think Singletary is in play, but I do expect 1A in this offense this week. It gets a really good matchup. But if you want to sit Dameon Pierce, I don't blame you because he's really been dreadful this year, averaging 2.9 true yard per carry, 14th in evaded tackles, 44th in breakaway run rate, and 42nd in yards created per touch. And he's only averaging 8.6 fantasy points per game. He's been super frustrating. If you want to sit him, I don't blame you, but the matchup is definitely in his favor. Javonte Williams here against Kansas City continues to see a bump in usage. Week 7 played 54% of the snaps, 63% of the rush attempts, and a 17% target share. His 13 PPR points were the most he's seen all season. The Chiefs defense has been very good this year, allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs. However, the last 3 weeks, they have allowed the 11th most rushing yards. So I do kind of view Javonte as a low-end RB2 this week in a tougher matchup at home. Javonte Williams is trending up. And then lastly, let's talk about this Bears situation. Roschon Johnson is expected to return this week. Matt Eberflus talked about this on Monday, stating that he is very close from returning. He basically has one more step in the protocol to be able to get out of it, which basically would probably be a full practice. So I expect on Wednesday or Thursday, once they get to practice, that you should see Roschon Johnson return. And now I know a lot of people are going to be like, no, I don't want a part of that. It's D'Onta Foreman. He just put up 30-plus fantasy points. But you have to remember, Foreman only played 48% of the snaps and 44% of the rush attempts. So it wasn't like he was a true workhorse by any stretch of the imagination. I do think Roschon Johnson is going to come in here and probably handle a good amount of touches. I think you could probably expect to see him 8 to 12 touches here in this matchup against the Chargers. While Foreman, I still think is going to be the 1A, at least for this week. But I will mention this is not a good matchup against the Chargers, who have been very good at stopping the run. They've allowed the 7th fewest rushing yards However, they have been gashed in the air, allowing the third most receiving yards to running back. So we'll have to see how this shakes out. But like I said, I still think that Foreman is more of a low end RB2, high end RB3 this week. But Roshan Johnson, if you're desperate and need a play, is in play this week for the Bears. So let's move over and talk about some of our RB3s that we definitely need to talk about here before we get out of here. The Packers situation. Aaron Jones continues to see extremely low usage, only 34% of the snaps, 30% of the running back rush attempts, and the 39% of the routes. While Dillon handled last week 57% of the snaps, 56% of the rush attempts, and Aaron Jones continues to be a risky option due to his low usage. AJ Dillon has put together 2 top 24 weeks and should be viewed as the RB1 within this offense until we see something different. As much as I like Aaron Jones, I'm not going to continue to run him out there as an RB2 or something like that just because of the name. He has yet to play anywhere over 40% of the snaps this season, and that is concerning. He did not look right against the Broncos, what should have been a good matchup. So I'm kind of sitting Aaron Jones if I can, but I understand if you can't. Let's move over and talk about the Browns situation. Jerome Ford appeared to have suffered a high ankle sprain, could miss a few weeks. I do expect Kareem Hunt to be more of the 1A in this situation, despite the fact that Pierre Strong actually handled more of the opportunities once Jerome Ford went down last week. But Kareem Hunt has been dealing with some of his own issues with the groin and the quad injury. But we have seen Hunt be productive. With back-to-back 15 fantasy point performances. I would trust Kareem Hunt, more of that low-end RB2, high-end RB3, but they do face a Seahawks defense that has allowed the fewest rushing yards to the position, but have allowed the 7th most touchdowns to the position. So I do think Kareem Hunt is definitely in play. Pierre Strong, if you picked him up, I think you could play him. It's just going to depend on your situation here if you should play him. Let's move over to Amari DiMercado versus Baltimore. After completely spurning fantasy owners in week 6, DiMercado came out in week 7 and rewarded those who were patient with him. He handled 79% of the snaps, 54% of the rush attempts, and 64% of the routes with a 16% target share. Keontae Ingram, big goose egg, saw 0 snaps. It was a little bit, it was obviously surprising with the usage that he saw, but it's not necessarily surprising because he still led the team in week 6 in snaps. He still played 45% of the snaps, which was most on the team. So it wasn't as surprising, but to see this, he completely take over as just a workhorse was a little bit shocking. However, Baltimore is a good defense, as we know, but they have struggled at times to stop the run. They've allowed the 15th most PPR points to the position. So if Amari DiMercado is going to continue to see this kind of workhorse role, 70% of the opportunities, I'm about that life. Lastly, I just want to hit on this Viking situation. I normally would have them much higher because they're playing the Packers this week, who have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to position. But last week, we saw Cam Akers kind of come out of nowhere and play 48% of the rush attempts and 40% of the snaps. And Madison has been efficient this season. And it's possible the Vikings maybe are looking to see what Cam Akers has, and maybe they're looking to move over and kind of make him the starting running back. I will say Cam Akers looked far more explosive in the opportunities that he saw last week, against the 49ers. And so this is a situation to monitor. I still think this week I'm still probably going to lean on Alexander Madison. I'm not going to think that, Cam Akers is just going to completely dispel Alexander Madison, but it is definitely something we should be monitoring. And then lastly, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard is the guy that I want to play. If Miles Sanders were to miss this week, I would move Chuba Hubbard all the way up into the RB2 spot. But as of right now, we don't know that. But Chuba Hubbard has looked way better than Miles Sanders has. But Miles Sanders is dealing with a little bit of a shoulder AC sprain, so we'll have to see if he's able to play coming off their bye week. He did miss practice today, so we'll see on that. But Chuba Hubbard is certainly the guy I want to play here. And I definitely think you can fire him up as an RB3, even if Miles Sanders plays. If he doesn't, you're definitely going to play him. So that being said, I appreciate everybody checking out the video. Let us know in the comment section below if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.